Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Husqvarna Viking, keeping the world sewing for over 140 years.
2, 1.
Hi, and welcome to Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community. I'm Mary Kate Karr-Petras, and I'm here today with quilt author and designer Penny Layman. Welcome, Penny.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. Well, you're here. You brought these beautiful pillows that we have on our set behind us. This is lovely. And they are projects from your foundation piecing book, or paper piecing book, The Paper Pieced Home. And so you came today to share with us some of your techniques and your designs.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to this.
Me too.
Yes, great. So let's take a look at the project that we're going to be working on today.
Okay. This is a new design that I have out. It's called an apple blossom. And what I've done is just taken 3 of the blocks and sewn them together. And then the pillow pattern actually you can find in my book.
Okay.
So you would just make 3 of the apple blossoms and then grab my book and follow through with the pillow pattern that's in it.
But this pattern is a new one.
Yes.
You've designed it since the book came out.
Right.
So
this pattern
nice
is
and
not in
fresh.
the book. That's
Great.
right. Yeah.
Well, let's take a look, and let's take a look at your tools, because you have some specific tools that you like to use that I've actually, some of them are new to me. So let's go through them.
Well, this is a really basic one that most people probably have, but I prefer to use a 1-inch acrylic ruler. And the reason for that is that it's a little bit thinner, so it's kind of, when I'm working with smaller pieces, it's nice to have a thinner ruler. And I like the 12-inch because sometimes I'm using bigger, making bigger blocks, so this is a really nice size to have.
Okay.
The second thing is a nice seam ripper, and this one has a really thin end with a really sharp point. And I like that because it helps me to unstitch things if I've made a mistake or whatever. So hopefully I won't have to use this today.
But it's good to look at, because I don't see those around as much as the general ones that most of us have in our sewing boxes.
That's right. Then just a, I think this is a 28mm rotary cutter. And the reason I like this size is because when I'm working with smaller pieces, once again, it just makes it nice. I'm not wielding this big rotary cutter around. And this is a fabric glue stick. And I like to use that for adhering my first piece of fabric to the pattern when I'm doing a section.
It keeps it flatter than using a pin.
Exactly, because the pins tend to distort. So I like using that. And then as I'm working and sewing with the foundation piecing, I like to use my seam roller because I don't like to get up every single time and iron. So I wait to iron after I have a section done, so I use this in between.
Yeah, because that's a lot of up and down.
Yes, exactly. And then the last thing I want to show are these fork pins.
Now that's the thing that I have not seen these before, so please explain.
So when I'm sewing a pattern together and I get all of my sections assembled, and then I start sewing the sections together, it is sometimes difficult once I pin to keep things from shifting around. So this fork pin I just place on either side of a seam that's crucial to keep it exactly right, so then it doesn't shift at all. So this is one of my very favorite tools to have.
Learn something new every day. Awesome.
That's right.
Well, let's take a look at your pattern in action. And this pin cushion is adorable.
One of my friends made that for me.
That's nice.
Isn't that sweet? Okay.
Just slide this over here.
Okay. So this is the apple blossom pattern in construction mode. So what I've done is sewn half of it together. I've sewn these 2 sections together, and now what I'm going to do is sew this last section together, and then we'll start assembling it.
Very good.
All right.
Just out of your way.
Okay. So one thing I want to go over before I start with that is that I feel very strongly about this, and what I like to do is to make sure that the paper is cut along the outside border of the pattern. I don't add a 1/4 inch to my pattern pieces, and the reason for that is that as I start sewing them together, it adds an extra layer of bulk that I have to sew through, and it makes it harder to line things up at the end when I'm sewing through paper and fabric. So that's the reason that I trim all the way around the edges.
All
and it's
right.
just a personal preference.
Yeah.
Some people prefer to leave the 1/4 inch on, but this is just works the best for me.
Yeah, and I will say that when we write foundation piecing patterns, we include that 1/4 inch seam allowance. So, you know, the official rules might say, this is what you have to do, and you're here to say, you don't have to do it that way.
No, you don't. You can make it up as you go.
Great, well, we'll see that in action after you finish piecing this, then we'll
Okay.
see how that works, so.
All right.
Take it away.
So what I like to do first of all is use this, the glue stick, and I'll adhere my first piece of fabric with the glue stick. So I don't have these numbered yet, but this is the first one that I'll do.
Okay.
So basically, I'm just going to put a little smear of glue on the back side where that piece of fabric will go. And then go ahead and line it, make sure it's right side out. So let me make sure I have that lined up. Right, we'll do it this way so that you have that 1/4 inch of fabric around the edge. So the next thing I'll do is add the second piece of fabric, and what I want to do on the back side is put the right sides of the fabrics together with this piece and line it up so that this fabric edge is a 1/4 inch at least past this line right here. And so when I fold it back and flip it out, this piece of fabric right here will cover that whole area,
Yeah.
plus give a 1/4 inch around the edge.
And that can take some finagling. Even, you know, experienced foundation piecers I talk to, they say yes, especially when you're just getting started, it can take some working with it to try to get your head around the flipping and stuff.
It's true, and I still to this day have to think sometimes 2 or 3 times, like, did I do that right? Okay, I need to start over here.
I just like to mention that in case anybody's not tried foundation piecing before,
Right.
that they shouldn't feel bad or
Right.
feel like it's beyond their skills or anything. It's a very hands-on thing sometimes, that's all. So.
Yeah, it really is. And I always keep my seam ripper handy for those times because I use it a lot, which I wish I didn't, but. So what we're doing is starting a 1/4 inch out and sewing on the first line between sections 1 and 2, which I'm sorry, I don't have those numbered. And then we're going to go ahead and once you get to that third line or second line, you're going to go ahead and reverse it.
Oh, okay.
And anytime I sew a partial line into a pattern, into the center of it, I like to go ahead and reverse so that it stay stitches that area. Now once you have that first line sewn, you're going to take your pattern, and what I like to do is go ahead and fold the paper back, and then if you want to get serious about it, you can use your ruler, line the 1/4 inch line up with the stitches that you just made, and go ahead and trim that extra off. Sometimes I'll just kind of eyeball it and not make a big deal out of it. It just depends on my mood. So then the next thing you'll do is go ahead and just flip that fabric over, and this is where my seam roller comes in handy. And you want to make sure that you press that seam open really well, because if you end up with puckers in the very end, it's going to obscure your design a little bit. So that's the first piece, and you can see that the fabric extends a 1/4 inch around the whole thing so far. So the next piece is this piece that I'm going to be adding. And so right sides together. And what I kind of do is, I've already trimmed it so it'll fit, but I use the light a lot. So if you hold it up to the light, you can see that the fabric on the back side extends a 1/4 inch past. So now what we're going to do is just go ahead and sew on that last line there. And go ahead and start a 1/4 inch. Since this line goes from the outside of the pattern to the outside of the pattern on the other side, we're going to start a 1/4 inch, on the outside, and then also go a 1/4 inch on the other side. And that is it. Now we're going to go ahead and cut that. So the last step is to, I guess the second to the last step is go ahead and trim that off.
Yeah. And again, if people are new to foundation piecing, they may be surprised by how much fabric you cut off, even when you pre-cut your patches like that, but it's just the nature of the technique.
Yeah.
So. And then even though you're going to press it with the iron, you still use your roller.
I do, because I think it allows a little more control to really get that seam open.
Do you want me to just give this a quick
Sure,
press?
that sounds great. So after I finish a section, I go ahead and press it, and then we'll go ahead and trim around the edges. So you can see that that has a 1/4 inch of fabric all the way around. And here we go with the trimming. And then once you get it to this step where you have all of your sections completed, they're all trimmed, then you can start sewing your pattern together. So this piece will go connected to, so this is F and this is E, and they get sewn together. So actually I'm going to sew together a different section than those two, because this has a little more, it needs to be joined a little bit more, it's a little more finagly.
Sure.
So to make sure that I get those points matched up correctly, what I'm going to do is I do a pinch method is what I call it. So I'll kind of line them up a little bit and then pinch it together and open it up and see, and that's perfect really. So then what I'll do is take one of my fork pins and go ahead and put it on either side of that seam that's so important, and put it in just like that. Some people like to pin from the other side, and then what you'll do is just go ahead and sew your 1/4 inch seam down this area here.
Just right along the paper?
Yes.
Okay. Do you ever catch the paper, or you're trying to avoid it?
I try to avoid it, because once again it just adds that extra bulk.
Right.
So just right down the edge there. And you're not supposed to do that, but I sew over pins all the time because I don't want it to shift around.
Those are pretty, well, pins by definition are usually pretty thin, but that is quite thin.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. And then once you get those sections together, I go ahead and open it and check it. It looks really good.
Perfect.
And then I like to roll the seams open, because that gives the front a flatter look. It keeps those stair steps from happening in the fabric. And then I'll just go ahead and press it with an iron.
And then you would just put the whole thing together?
Right, so sew this section on to the sections you just sewed together, and then you would sew those two sections together, and there you have your apple blossom.
There you have it. And then you remove your papers.
Yes, at the very end. So you would sew all of it together, press the seams open, then go ahead and use your starch, and then remove all the papers.
Awesome. Let's take a quick look at some of your other blocks. These are ones that are featured in your book, right?
Yes.
Because they're just too cute to pass up. And you brought a bunch, but we just decided to show 3. Trust me, you're going to want to take a look at the ones in the book. A great shower bathtub combination.
Yeah, I really love old-fashioned things, so this was one I've always wanted to do.
And then this one,
Fried eggs are a great breakfast for me, so a little sandwich, and so that's what inspired this blog.
So it combines, obviously, foundation piecing and applique.
Yes.
Is this hand appliqued?
It is.
Turned edge, but one could do it with fusible if they
Oh,
wanted
of course,
to.
and then sew around the edges with your machine if you'd like. Yep.
And then you said this one was one that you particularly like.
Yes, this is what I call Allie, and I don't know, I just really like animals, so that's what made me decide to do an alligator, and then I chose to do this deer print because it just gave it a little bit of a extra depth, in my opinion, on the body of the alligator. So.
Well, it's great, and it's a nice illustration of just how foundation piecing, if a designer really knows what she's doing, the possibilities are endless.
Yes,
in terms
absolutely.
of the images that you can create.
Oh, yeah.
And you said you teach a class on how to design your own foundation patterns?
Yes, I do. I've taught classes
and
for that.
How long of a class is that?
It's usually about 8 hours.
So there's a lot that goes into it.
Yes, it's pretty intense, but people usually walk away very happy that they can design their own patterns.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for coming today, sharing your designs, sharing your techniques. I learned about these new pins. I had not seen those in action before, so this was great for me. We hope that it was great for you as well. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Husqvarna Viking, keeping the world sewing for over 140 years.